Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is Pro-Revenge Story. Backstory: my dad is a high school assistant principal. It's currently his first year at a new school, and it's a much better school than the last one he was at, which was overpopulated, drug-filled, and many of the students there had to have free or reduced lunches. There were fights almost every week, and my dad had to suspend kids almost every day. His new school is much better, with just 2 incidents all year. One with an autistic kid who had an episode, and the one I am about to tell you fine Redditors about. Cast: my dad, Mark, entitled girl, Zoe, entitled mother, Karen, entitled brother, Tyler, entitled sister, Amber, the bus driver, Mr. Jenkins, Judge Reynolds, bus driver, school systems lawyer, Mr. Collins, the Karen's lawyer, Mr. Peterson, my dad's principal, Dr. Wilson, and the school resource officer, Officer Martinez. To clarify, any dialogue I might include will obviously not be 100% correct. The original incident took place about 2 months ago, in June 2025. I'm not 100% sure what started it, but either Mr. Jenkins accidentally bumped into Zoe while he was dropping her off, or he told her off for saying something rude, but she got pissed and texted Karen about it. Karen came storming out of her home and started yelling at him. "How dare you touch my daughter?" she screamed, even though Mr. Jenkins tried to explain that it was an accident. "Ma'am, please calm down. I didn't," Mr. Jenkins attempted to say. "Don't tell me to calm down. I'll have your job for this," Karen shouted, her face turning bright red. Mr. Jenkins, not wanting to escalate the situation, just closed the door and drove off. The next morning, Mr. Jenkins went to pick up Zoe, but when he got to her driveway, she wasn't there. Karen, Tyler, and Amber were. He opened the door to ask where Zoe was, and that's when all 3 of them boarded the bus. "Where's Zoe?" Mr. Jenkins asked. "She's not riding with you anymore," Karen snapped. "We're here to teach you a lesson about respecting people." Zoe is a junior, I think. Her older brother Tyler was around 22, and her older sister Amber was in college. These people were all adults, and all 3 of them started screaming at poor Mr. Jenkins, threatening him, calling him slurs, and telling him off. "You think you can push my sister around?" Tyler shouted, getting right in Mr. Jenkins' face. "I'll show you what happens to people who mess with our family." "I'll make sure you never work in this county again," Amber added, filming the whole thing on her phone like she was collecting evidence for some imaginary crime. The rest of the kids on the bus were expectedly scared. Some of the younger ones started crying, while the older ones just stared in shock or looked down at their phones, trying to avoid eye contact. "Get off my bus now," Mr. Jenkins finally managed to say. "You are trespassing on school property. We'll leave when we're good and ready," Karen replied. But eventually the 3 of them got off the bus. The moment they stepped off, Mr. Jenkins closed the door and sped away. The one thing the entitled family forgot to think about was the fact that there are 4 HD cameras equipped with audio sensors on every bus in our county. They caught everything. The poor dude got the rest of the kids to school and went straight to the front office. My dad was pissed when he saw the footage. He got the video feed from the bus, called Officer Martinez, who called some other officers, and had Karen's ass arrested for malicious harassment, intimidation, trespassing, and a few other things. "This is completely unacceptable," my dad told Dr. Wilson while reviewing the footage. "No one threatens our staff like this." Dr. Wilson let my dad have control over the whole situation because he knows my dad does not mess around with these kinds of things. "Handle it however you see fit, Mark. I trust your judgment." So my dad helped Mr. Jenkins get some revenge. First, he had Zoe switch to a different bus route so she couldn't mess with Mr. Jenkins anymore. Then he had Tyler, Amber, and Karen permanently banned from the school grounds, and then he gave Mr. Jenkins a month of paid time off. These were just petty revenge, if that. Working with their lawyer, my dad got statements from most of the kids who were on the bus, and they decided to press charges against only Karen and Tyler, who had apparently been in the middle of a 6-month probationary period for a different crime, so he was essentially guaranteed jail time. Going into the trial, 6 weeks ago, nobody expected Karen to get any more jail time than a week, if that. My dad, Dr. Wilson, and Officer Martinez were all in the courthouse in case they needed to be called as witnesses. They were not. Mr. Collins made his remarks, and Karen's lawyer, Mr. Peterson, just tried to get her sentence reduced. He knew they were going to lose. The videos weren't even shown to Judge Reynolds because there was so much other evidence. But Judge Reynolds surprised everyone when he gave Karen a 30-day sentence. "Mrs. Clark," the judge said sternly, looking directly at Karen, "you threatened the life of a school employee, endangered minors, and trespassed on school property. And for what? Because a bus driver did his job and corrected your daughter's behavior? This court will not tolerate such disregard for the safety of children and school personnel. He made it very clear to her that she had threatened the life of a man, endangered kids, and trespassed on school property for no reason besides that Mr. Jenkins had told off Zoe and that she should be punished accordingly. My dad and Dr. Wilson were trying not to cheer. But that wasn't even the best part. Tyler skipped his trial. They were back-to-back trials, so there's no way he could have forgotten. Judge Reynolds immediately issued a bench warrant for his arrest. This demonstrates a complete lack of respect for this court, Judge Reynolds said, visibly annoyed as he signed the warrant. Bring him in as soon as possible. Tyler was caught the next day in Karen's house, and when brought in front of Judge Reynolds, he was given a year in prison for breaking his probation, skipping his trial, and for the same charges as his mother. "Did you think I wouldn't notice your absence, Mr. Clark?" Judge Reynolds asked when Tyler was brought before him in handcuffs. I forgot the date," Tyler mumbled, not making eye contact. "You forgot a court date that was scheduled immediately after your mother's? The same court date that was clearly explained to you multiple times? I find that hard to believe. If that isn't pro-revenge, I don't know what is." As for Zoe, she switched schools after all the embarrassment. Last I heard, she's keeping a low profile at her new school. My dad has told this story to almost everyone he knows, as he finds the almost instant karma hilarious. The look on their faces when the judge announced the sentences, my dad likes to say, was absolutely priceless. Some people really do think they're above the law until they find out they're not. If he had a Reddit account, I'm sure he would have posted it everywhere. The next one is an entitled people story. My grandfather left me 20 acres of beautiful wooded land when he passed away 5 years ago. It's in a rural area about an hour outside the city where I live. The property has been in our family for generations, with a small cabin near the entrance that my grandfather built himself back in the 1970s. I visit a few times a year for weekend getaways, but honestly, I hadn't been out to the back portion of the property in almost 2 years. Last spring, I decided to take a week off work to spend some time at the cabin and maybe do some hiking through the entire property. I packed up my SUV and headed out on a Friday afternoon. The cabin was just as I'd left it, a bit dusty, but otherwise in good shape. I spent Saturday cleaning and settling in, then Sunday morning I decided to hike the property line to check for any fallen trees or other issues. The front 10 acres were exactly as I remembered. Dense trees, a small creek, and plenty of wildlife. But as I made my way to the back portion of the property, I started hearing construction sounds. At first, I thought maybe a neighbor was building something on their land. As I got closer, though, I couldn't believe my eyes. There, sitting on my property, was a massive house under construction. And not just any house, we're talking a 5,000 plus square foot monstrosity with stone facades, huge windows, and what looked like the beginnings of an in-ground pool. Construction workers were all over the place, hammering, sawing, and doing whatever else you do when building a mansion in the middle of nowhere. I stood there in shock for a good minute before approaching a guy who looked like he might be in charge. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "What's going on here?" The foreman looked at me like I was an alien. "We're building a house. Can I help you with something?" "Yeah, you can. This is my property. Who authorized this construction?" He laughed. "Look, buddy, I don't know who you think you are, but Mrs. Winters purchased this land last year. We have all the permits and paperwork in order." "Mrs. Winters? I've never heard that name in my life, and I definitely didn't sell this property to anyone." My blood was starting to boil. "I need to speak to her immediately." "She's not here today," he said, looking a bit uncomfortable now. "She usually stops by on Tuesdays to check on progress." I pulled out my phone and showed him the property deed that I keep scanned in my cloud storage. "This is my land. My grandfather left it to me 5 years ago. I've owned it free and clear ever since." The foreman's face went pale. He made a quick call and then told the crew to take a break. "Mrs. Winters will be here in about 30 minutes, he said. "She says there must be some misunderstanding." I sat on a nearby stump, fuming. How could someone just start building on my land? I called my lawyer but got his voicemail since it was Sunday. I left an urgent message explaining the situation. About 45 minutes later, a shiny black SUV came roaring up the dirt road that had been carved through my trees. Out stepped a woman in her late 40s, dressed like she was heading to a country club rather than a construction site. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded before I could even stand up. "Who are you, and why are you stopping my construction?" I stood and tried to keep my voice calm. "I'm the owner of this property, all 20 acres of it. I never sold this land to anyone, and I certainly didn't authorize a mansion to be built here." "That's ridiculous," she scoffed. I purchased this land from a real estate developer named James Morgan last year. I have all the paperwork. The name meant nothing to me. Well, James Morgan had no right to sell you something that wasn't his. I have the deed right here. I showed her the same document I'd shown the foreman. Her face turned a shade redder. This has to be a mistake. I've already spent over $800,000 on this construction. The property cost me $350,000. I'm sorry about that, but you've been scammed. This is my land, and I never authorized anyone to sell it or build on it. Mrs. Winters, or Karen, as I'd started thinking of her, pulled out her phone and made a call, walking a few steps away. I could hear her yelling at someone named James, demanding he explain what was going on. After a heated conversation, she stormed back to me. This is absurd. My lawyer assures me that my purchase was legitimate. You must be confused about your property lines. I shook my head. I'm not confused. I walked the property line today, and your house is definitely on my land. If you want, we can call a surveyor right now. Fine, she snapped. But construction continues until this is resolved. I'm not losing any more time because of your mistake. Actually, I said, construction stops now. This is my property, and I'm not authorizing any further work. She laughed in my face. You can't just stop a permitted construction project. I have approval from the county. Permits obtained fraudulently don't count, I replied. But let's call the sheriff and see what they have to say. That shut her up momentarily. She took a deep breath and tried a different approach. Look, if there's been a misunderstanding, perhaps we can work something out. Would you be willing to sell me this portion of the land? I'll pay well above market value. I considered it for a moment. I didn't really need all 20 acres, but something about her entitled attitude rubbed me the wrong way. I'm not interested in selling. This land has been in my family for generations. Everyone has a price, she said, smiling tightly. Name yours. It's not for sale, I repeated, and I want all construction stopped immediately until this is sorted out legally. The smile vanished. You'll regret this, she hissed. Do you have any idea who I am? My husband is on the county board. We'll see who really owns this land when I'm done with you. With that, she stormed back to her SUV and peeled out, spraying dirt and gravel everywhere. The foreman approached me cautiously. So, what do you want us to do? Pack up and leave until this is resolved, I told him. I'm calling the sheriff and my lawyer. The sheriff arrived about an hour later. After reviewing my documentation, he agreed that there seemed to be a legitimate dispute over ownership. He instructed the construction crew to cease work until the matter was resolved legally, which the foreman reluctantly agreed to. My lawyer called back that evening and was livid when I explained the situation. This sounds like a classic real estate scam, he said. Someone pretended to own your land and sold it to an unsuspecting buyer. I'll file an emergency injunction tomorrow morning to officially halt construction, and we'll get to the bottom of this. The next day, my lawyer confirmed what I suspected. James Morgan was a scam artist who had created fake documents showing he owned my property, then sold it to Mrs. Winters. He'd targeted rural properties where the owners weren't frequently present, creating convincing forgeries of deeds and other documents. He'd apparently done this to several other property owners in the county. Mrs. Winters, however, wasn't going down without a fight. She filed a countersuit, claiming that I was the one with fraudulent documents and that she was the rightful owner. She also tried to use her husband's position on the county board to pressure the planning department to validate her permits. The legal battle dragged on for 3 months. During that time, construction remained halted, with the half-built mansion sitting like a scar on my beautiful property. Mrs. Winters tried everything, offering to buy the land with insulting lowball offers, threatening me with endless legal battles, and even spreading rumors in the community that I was trying to steal her house. Finally, we had our day in court. The judge reviewed all the evidence, including the chain of title that clearly showed my ownership going back to my grandfather and beyond. James Morgan had been arrested for multiple counts of fraud in another county, which helped our case considerably. The judge ruled entirely in my favor. I was the legal owner of the property, Mrs. Winters' purchase was invalid, and all construction permits were revoked. Mrs. Winters broke down in the courtroom, wailing about how unfair it was that she'd lost all that money. The judge was sympathetic but firm. Her recourse was against James Morgan, not me. As we left the courthouse, my lawyer pulled me aside. You know, you have options here. The construction on your land constitutes trespassing and property damage. You could demand that she remove the structure entirely and restore the land to its original condition. I thought about it. The idea of making her tear down that monstrosity was tempting, especially after all the stress she'd put me through. But then I had a better idea. I approached Mrs. Winters and her lawyer outside. I have a proposal, I said. "The house is about half built on my property. I'm willing to sell you the 5 acres where the house sits for $500,000. Her eyes widened. "That's highway robbery. That land isn't worth more than $50,000. Maybe not before you started building on it, but now it's worth considerably more to you, isn't it? Your other option is to tear it all down and restore my land to its original condition, which will cost you at least that much and leave you with nothing." Her lawyer whispered something in her ear, and her face fell. She knew I had her cornered. After a few more weeks of negotiation, we settled on $425,000 for the 5 acres where her house sat. I used part of that money to build a proper fence around the remaining 15 acres of my property, with very clear no trespassing signs facing her house. The best part? I used another chunk of that money to renovate my grandfather's cabin into a beautiful year-round home. Now I live there full-time, and every morning I enjoy my coffee while looking out at the woods that have been in my family for generations, and occasionally at the reminder of what happens when someone tries to take what's mine without asking. Mrs. Winters and her husband finally moved into their completed mansion about a year later. They've never spoken to me, though I occasionally see them giving me dirty looks when I walk near our property line. I just wave and smile, knowing that their dream home cost them nearly twice what they'd planned, thanks to their entitlement and failure to do proper due diligence. The scammer who sold her my land, he's serving 12 years in federal prison for multiple counts of real estate fraud. Turns out Mrs. Winters wasn't his only victim, just the one who picked the wrong piece of land to build on. The next one is a malicious compliance story. My mother is toxic and likes to have unspoken rules for me that I never know exist until I break them. However, I have one time in my life where I broke one but decided she was going to eat her own words because I had enough. A few years ago, her birthday in May landed on a weekday with Mother's Day that weekend. I was busy at work that week and was already working weekends and overtime, but I always made sure to remember her birthday and Mother's Day. I bought her presents, sent her a birthday card and Mother's Day card, texted her a happy birthday and Mother's Day, and even gave a very well thought out post on her FB. It's all I had time for. However, I never heard a word from her. She didn't call me, nor did I get a text if she even received the present that I sent her. No thank you, nothing. I was too busy to even ask about it, and with her typical behavior of ignoring me, I just didn't press her about it. In December, a special event came up in my life, which I told her about several times. My sister had similar events, and my mother always remembered hers, so when it came and went with her saying nothing, I brought it up over text. I was told that she didn't realize it was important to me. I was upset and admittedly angry over once again being ignored and forgotten about. Cue her usual deflection, in which she then turned the entire argument around on me, and that's when I found out she did receive my present, 7 months later. She then told me, and I quote, "You didn't think it hurt my feelings when you didn't bother to call me on my birthday or Mother's Day? Sorry, but Facebook cards just don't get it, and neither does texting." Fine, cue my malicious compliance. For the next year, she never got a text, a FB post, birthday present, Mother's Day present, Christmas present, etc., but she got her phone call on her birthday and holidays. Phone calls are the only thing she received because, as she said, other forms of communication and thoughtful gestures didn't cut it. After a year of this, my mother sends in her reliable flying monkey. My sister calls me to tell me that Mom doesn't think you love her because you don't send her presents anymore. I'd like to say I stood my ground, but at the time I was still a doormat, so the malicious compliance ended. I'm no contact with my family now, but to this day, it makes me proud that for once I used her words against her and set a boundary. She never said that to me again, so it was worth it. The next one is an entitled people story. My best friend Kay works at an art center. It's mostly a museum/gallery, but they do a lot of community things like offer art classes, and as a nonprofit, they also have a small store to sell items their instructors make or other trinkets. She's not a Reddit user, which is unfortunate because she could post a dozen amazing entries about her stepdaughter, who's a true Kevin A. But when I was texting her yesterday to complain about how bad my Monday was, she said there must be something in the air because she had a crappy day too, and told me the story. I haven't been able to get it out of my mind due to the sheer audacity and entitlement of a stranger that I've never met, and thought I'd post it here. So Kay works as a marketing director and grant writer for the art center, but I guess they were short-handed on Monday and she was helping out with the small gift store they have up front. Obviously, she's not used to doing things like applying discounts, using the cash register, etc. And one patron was getting very demanding and complaining that Kay wasn't going fast enough wrapping up her fragile glass and ceramic art purchases, or applying the correct discounts, then complaining about Kay needing to take time to look up the discount codes, etc. In the middle of this, the phone rings, and she answers. It's a woman calling from several states away, stating that she used to teach art classes there. Note: I'm sure they paid the art instructors, but it's a nominal amount, something like $30 a class, and I think the student's enrollment fee for a course, usually a total of 4-6 classes depending on the type of art, is around $25. Point being, even if an instructor was teaching multiple courses at a time, this isn't the equivalent of a full-time job, more like something to keep a retiree busy. I just mention it based on how the ending of the phone conversation went. Customer in front of Kay is complaining, and a nice volunteer comes over to help with the checkout, which is great, but volunteers aren't supposed to have access to the cash register or handle money. Kay tries to ask the woman on the phone if she can put her on hold, but was told, "No, this will just take a minute," by the caller. Kay was thinking, okay, she said she used to work here. Maybe she just wants to be transferred to the person that does hiring so she can come back and teach, or wants to talk to someone else and reminisce. That only takes a few seconds, and I'll transfer the call. Regrettably, she said, okay, instead of insisting the woman go on hold for a minute. So as the customer in front is complaining loudly, while Kay tries to do the credit card transaction and the volunteer wrap the art purchases up to prevent them from breaking as fast as possible, the caller explains to Kay that she used to be an instructor at the art center years ago. She needs the contact information of her former students. Kay's not sure she's understanding this correctly given the commotion going on around her, but the caller explains that she knows all her former students, as part of their enrollment, had to put down a phone number or email or other contact information, and she wants that. She's sure the art center keeps those lists, and those former students are probably still taking classes with other instructors right now or have become members of the art center, but they were her students, so she's allowed to contact them. She just needs all their names and numbers. At this point, customer in front of her is making a ruckus about discount codes, and Kay realizes this is definitely not going to take just a minute. So Kay calls over a program director that happened to be walking by to take over the phone call and just concentrates on the customer in front of her and applying all the correct discounts. This alone apparently took several minutes because the customer wanted her 10% senior discount off on top of the 5% membership discount when you're only allowed one or the other. The whole time, the director is standing there on the corded landline phone next to her, saying things like, "Yes, I remember you. Well, that was almost 10 years ago. I don't know if we still have those sign-up sheets. You want the current student's information? But why? Do you need a reference?" And then there was a very long pause. You see, the caller explained that she had moved to a different state, was unable to get a job, and now living in a motel with no money. She needed to reach out to all her former students and let them know this so they could send her money. So she needs the names of her students. They love her and will want to help her out, and she's entitled to be able to keep in contact with them if she wants to. But if they don't have that information, she needs all the names and phone numbers of current students. An art student would never let an art instructor suffer like she is, even if they never met her. So she'll call them all up and they'll send her money once they know about it. Needless to say, the art center did not think this was a valid reason to give out contact information. Caller apparently kept pressing her sob story, trying to pull on heartstrings, then eventually becoming irate and started to say something about how if the art center was refusing to give her the names of her students, then they will have to rehire her. All they have to do is give her an advance on her paycheck and so she can return to the area and find a place to live. When the director stated they weren't hiring right now, the caller then demanded to speak to a program director because these were her students and she needed to talk to them. Kay said the only silver lining of her crappy Monday was hearing the woman say, "Name, I am the director, and my decision is final," before slamming down the phone and relaying the conversation to Kay. The caller did continue to call back, but they stopped answering calls from that area code for the rest of the day. I wish the art center had a working answering machine or voicemail, because I'm sure those messages would have been hilarious. The next one is an entitled parent story. "Hey guys, this just happened today, and I thought you guys would get a kick out of it. I work in sales, and to keep things anonymous because I still work here, the products we sell are aimed towards children and families. We offer open play for a fee to let the kids run around and enjoy themselves. Our rules are very simple and very basic, so easy to follow it's impossible to get confused. One rule that I believe is the easiest one to follow is no toys in the building. Sounds easy and simple enough, right? Well, earlier I had a mother come in, EM, with her adorable son who I'll call Racer. It was their first time visiting us, so after they filled out the waiver, I had her read the rules that were posted right in front of her while I was getting ready to charge her. Things were okay as she just sat down on a bench while Racer was running around having the time of his life. While he's playing, we have a radio going playing kid-friendly music. However, we got hit with some rain and lost connection, so it was pretty quite... I'm minding my business playing games at my desk when I start hearing something small roll around. At first I thought it was the rain hitting the building weird, but because of the silence, the sound was louder than them small pitter-patter of rain that was coming down. I get up to look around to see what's making that sound, and I see Racer near his playing with a small toy car. I look around to find his mom. Since maybe he had it with him and I didn't see it or something, I look around him and just a couple of inches away there's Mom on her iPhone texting someone and completely ignoring her kid, so I stood there for like 4 minutes to see if she would say or do anything, and nope, she just sat there on her phone. So I get up and walk over to her and say, "Excuse me, ma'am. He's not allowed to have toys in the building as it says in the rules you read. You need to go ahead and put them up in your car." She says okay, and gets herself and her kid ready while I go sit back at my desk. A few minutes later, she's carrying Racer and heading towards the door, and I say, "Have a good day." As she left, a litter while I check the reviews for our store, as we just dealt with a very strange woman when I see a new review. And it's the mom and Racer, but before I start reading, I realize she left a 3-paragraph review, and I already knew it wasn't going to be good. She basically gave a backstory about how it's their first time here, and her kid is special needs, and it's so hard to find a good place for kids like him to play, for like an entire paragraph. Then literally in 3 sentences, she talks about shows she saw me walking up to them, and gave attitude about Racer playing with his cars and they need to be put away in the car. Then spits out another paragraph about how she felt, how I was so rude, and then says, "We were literally the only ones in the store, so I didn't think it would be any issues since we were just waiting for the rain to pass," admitting she knew what she was doing was wrong. She put in a whole lot of garbage that never happened, like how she told me he's autistic and needs to play with his toys, how she kept telling Racer he couldn't play with the toys and was trying to get them back. Her entire review can be summed up as, "Oh boo-hoo, we were the only ones in the store, so I decided he can play with his toys, but when the worker told me he couldn't, I got so mad, so I wrote a fake review admitting I'm in the wrong, but it doesn't matter because he's autistic and there was no one in the store. He should have let us do whatever we went." I already told my manager about it, and unlike other lazy, terrible managers, he actually knows I'm being serious about it and isn't taking the review seriously. Well, probably have to explain to the supervisor, who's also chill, about what happened and have it removed. I know it's not exciting, but I thought it would be a good story. If anything happens, I'll make an update. Anyway,